I'd like to call to order the November 14th, 2017 Park and Recreation Commission meeting. The first item is roll call, and I'll turn that over to Janet.
Thank you. Commissioner McCauley? Here. Commissioner Strother?
Here.
Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner McCormick?
Here.
Commissioner Willett?
Here.
Commissioner Giesecke?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Darlene?
Here.
Commissioner Keeley?
Here.
Great, thank you. The next item is approval of our meeting agenda. If I could have somebody make a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay. Next item is approval of our meeting minutes from our October 10th, 2017 meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great, so that passed. The next section is community comment. I don't believe we have anybody in the audience on community comment, but I'll just make sure. Okay, great. Okay, then we'll start with our reports and recommendation. And the first item is the 2018 Parks and Recreation Department fees. And Susan, if you could help us with that.
Yep, thank you, Brenda. So first, I would like to introduce all of the outstanding staff that have joined us tonight for the meeting. We have Patty McGrath, the General Manager for Edinboro Park and the Aquatic Center, Tom Shirley, the General Manager for Centennial Lakes, Chad Ishins, our General Manager at Braemar Arena and Braemar Field, Joe Aboud, our General Manager at the golf course, Nicole Gorman, who is our Recreation Supervisor, and Nicole specializes in like senior programming and some health and fitness, Amanda Clark, and Amanda is one of our Recreation Supervisors whose main focus is youth programs and does a lot of special events for us. And then Tiffany Bushland, another one of our Recreation Supervisors. Tiffany's main focus is adult athletics, youth athletics, and a variety of other things. So in the packet, you have a copy of the staff report and then the complete Parks and Recreation Department proposed fees. You also have a copy of the 2016 year-end financials. So just a couple highlights. First, so in the actual fees, I just wanted to point out that any new fee or any fees that staff is recommending a change, they are indicated in that bold print. Tax is not included in any of the fees. We added a new category this year based on some feedback from the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting last year. We added the listing of the program classification level. So the programs being classified as either essential, important, or value add. And then on the year-end financials, we included the 2016 versus 2017. The 2017 have only been updated through October, and we felt like showing a complete year would provide a little bit more accurate picture of our cost recovery for our facilities. I also wanted to just note that those financial reports do include depreciation. And then the Arts Center fees are not included. All of our Arts Center fees are reviewed by the Arts and Culture Commission. And tonight, we are asking the Commission to review and recommend the proposed fees. So with that, this year we decided to present the fees a little different from the past. So I've asked all of our general managers and recreation supervisors to just give a kind of a brief summary on his or her fees, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions. So with that, I think we'll start off with Patty, who will talk about the Aquatic Center fees and Edinboro Park.
Good evening. Going to start with the Aquatic Center fees and charges, like Susan said. As we looked at establishing what the fees and charges were going to be, a couple things that we take into consideration beyond just the fee. Obviously, our primary goal is to provide a safe, fun experience for every visitor that comes to the facility. That may seem obvious, but that ties directly to the financial side of what we do. And the second goal is to keep the facility looking fresh and new every year, which is challenging at a 60-year-old facility. The Aquatic Center season is normally 78 days long, and the revenue expectation is $1,054,000. $1,054,000. So as we looked at revenue, we are really looking at our season pass fees. And We did, as you can see on the chart, we have indicated a fee increase for residents and non-residents. The break-even point in visits for residents is 6 visits. For non-residents, it's just over 7.5 visits. Statistics show that season pass holders are visiting an average of 12 times over the season, so they're coming twice as many times to get their value out of that. And typically in the feedback that we get, last year, honestly, I don't think we received any feedback that our prices were too high. If anything, people are surprised at how low the season pass fees are. So we are also looking at an increase in our lane rental fees for both of our swim clubs, the Aquajets and the Edina Swim Club. It's been quite some time since those were increased, so we're looking at an increase there. And then with our daily admission, just a very nominal increase there. For those of you that have been on the commission for a while, you might remember that in 2016 we were a little nervous because we were going to crack that $11 mark by the time you put tax on it. And we've not had any negative impact from that either. So it seems that people are feeling that the price is set accurately and appropriately for all the things that we have to offer. On the expense side, we looked at salaries and depreciation as some areas that are really going to show some significant increase for us. With the implementation of the part-time and seasonal compensation plan, the Aquatic Center especially took a pretty big hit because of our lifeguard starting wage increase. We are significantly lower than communities around us, and we were having great difficulty recruiting enough lifeguards. We hire about 60 lifeguards. So in 2017, that salary increase, the increase in minimum wage, and the addition of one more lifeguard related to the new play structure totaled about $25,000 just through the course of last season. And then with depreciation with our great new play structure and the new filters, that's another addition of about $60,000 in depreciation from 2017 to 2018. The factors that we considered as we were setting these fees is really we want to give residents the best value. What is reasonable, what is a good value, and how do we cover increasing expenses? Those are all things that we take into account. Historically, we look at what the fees have been. The increases have been minimal over the years, or the more recent years. We look at the break-even points, like I already mentioned, and then hours of operation. As we look at surrounding communities, it's hard to compare because facilities are so different, their hours are different, their operations are different. But we do look at St. Louis Park, Bloomington, Richfield, and then Cascade Bay and Egan just to see what they're doing and make sure that we're staying in line, or that, just that we're priced appropriately for us. We want to know what they're doing so we can make good decisions. So that really is kind of my summary for the Aquatic Center. If there are questions, I would be happy to answer.
So I've got a few, Patty. This is Greg. Visitors this summer, will there be a significantly different experience than what they had last summer? I know we did some maintenance upgrades, some capital upgrades. Anything that will be significantly different in the experience that visitors will have?
Well, I think you're correct. Last season, we did have the new zero-depth play structure that was an addition. This year, we will have the slides are going to be refurbished, and so that's not exactly going to change their experience in terms of how they go down the slide. It may change their experience of that they think that the facility feels a little more modern and new. We continue to also, as we're working on the facility side of it, also on our customer service training side, because we feel like that's a huge part of the experience.
Okay, all right, thanks. And the fees now are without tax, but tax will still be collected?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So
Yep.
It'll still get up above, it'll show the increase, but at least the posted fee almost looks like it went down from previous years, but that's just because it's a change in the tax, right?
We have posted it without tax in the past as well, but all of our fees are without tax, but then tax does get added on both the daily admission and season pass fees.
Okay. Question on the increases, just wondering, 15% increase on the seasonal pass, but only 2% on the daily pass. Mm-hmm. Any particular reason with about, I think you have about 35,000 daily passes over the
Right.
summer. Any reason why you're not going up a little bit more on the daily passes?
We really felt like we just are at the threshold there. Nobody else has cracked the $10 mark. With tax, that comes out to about $11.25. And if you add the flow rider, because a lot of people do put the flow rider onto it, we're trying to be conscientious and really keep that at least under the $20 mark total.
Okay. And then the last thing I had is, do you have any intent to encourage or discourage post 5 p.m. visitors? The way you have that priced, is that intended to try to encourage people to wait a little bit, or do you? How do you see people looking at that price for, what is it, $8.40 after 5 p.m. versus $10.70 for a daily?
Yeah. Last year we had about 3,300 to 3,500 visits after 5 p.m. What we're really mostly trying to do is encourage people to buy a season pass, because we still think that is where the best value is, whether you're a resident or a non-resident. At this point, there are some people who just can't ever get there before that, so still having a discount for a kind of a afternoon swim, people still seem interested in having that available.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Can you, excuse me, can you remind me how long, if I get there after 5 o'clock, remind me, is it closed at 8 or 9?
It has been 8:30 in June and July, and then 8 in August.
Okay, so, I mean, I almost feel like that seems like it's still really high, so you're saving $2, but that almost seems like it's really low to me in terms of the savings on that side. That's why I was asking that question in terms of how long it was open.
Okay.
Is part of the customer service going to be, it's a very clean facility, but the bathhouses and the slipperiness of the tile and stuff like that? I have a 4-year-old that's been it a couple times in there, so I just wanted to know if that would be part of it.
Yes, as we work with our facility maintenance staff, we actually this year had more staff on facility maintenance, and we just really we recognize that in an aging facility, we're going to have to really keep up with that, because even when it's at its best clean, it may appear to some guests that it's just dated.
General question on, it's a dated facility somewhat, but there's been a lot of enhancements to it. How do we sit in your view, say in the next 5 to 10 years, as far as, are there any challenges? Are we pretty well set? Are we drawing in the number of people we want to, and kind of maximizing that? Give us a little feel for that, would you please?
Sure. I think we are drawing in the number of people we want. As Greg said, we have about 35,000. Last season we had about 35,000 daily visitors, depending on the weather. The year before we had a little bit better weather, and it was just near 40,000. So that makes a huge difference in our finances, of course. I think going forward, we're going to be pretty set with our bigger pieces of equipment in the facility. We're just going to need to do some of those aesthetic and cosmetic things, chair replacement, some work on the deck, things like that may not be as exciting as the new play structure, but still are very important for the people who are visiting.
Patty, some of the surrounding cities allow people to bring in food and beverages in a cooler. Do we have any thought process about changing our rules to allow that?
At this time, we do not. We haven't discussed that. With the concession stand that we have, that was a decision about 5 years ago that was purposeful, I think, to really try to build the concession revenue at the facility, and that concession revenue is still a big part of the budget for that. It's about $130,000 over the course of the summer, and that's still a big part of our operation there.
Okay.
Can I add on to that? Is there any options, or can we look at actually what's offered at the concession in terms of, I don't feel like we're as competitive as well as I think it would be nice to see some options that were a little bit healthier, or I don't know, fresh fruit or something that's not just all like a hot dog. I don't know many people want to eat a hot dog in a swimming suit, but besides kids, and I'm assuming that a lot of kids have parents that go, I think it would be a much better experience if we could actually accommodate a little bit more options than just, it doesn't need to be gourmet, but I just think it would be nice to have some other options.
And every year we do meet with our provider, and we've tried different things over the years, so we will definitely be doing that again, and if anybody has some more specific ideas, I'd sure love to hear them.
So Patty, with this recommendation, you're thinking the revenue for 18 is going to be around 1054, and then my question is, what type of operating profit do you target for the Aquatic Center?
Normally, our cost recovery there has been anywhere from 105 to 112%. With that increase in depreciation, taking that into it, we're because of the improvements that we've just made now, we're probably a little closer to the break-even mark, but we feel like those were improvements we needed to do to stay competitive anyway. So as we work through the next few years, we probably won't see as large of a cost recovery on that, but that's our goal, to get back to it.
Patty, just one more question. Do you feel we're at maximum capacity, or are we still trying to build the number of people that come and more often? Where are we on that scale?
Yeah, I think we can still build. There are certain times that are clearly very, very busy, but there are other times that that we're not at our capacity, and some of those evening times might be another time where we can invite more guests, and maybe we have other activities that are going on during that time as well to make that time more attractive. Okay. I think we still have more room to grow there.
All right, thank you.
All right. If there's no other, then I'll just move on to Edinboro Park. At Edinboro, we don't really have too many changes to our fee structure there, but the proposed changes do include just a modest increase in the 10 admission pass for the play park and the pool and track. It would still give a $5 discount off of paying each time as you came. There's also a modest increase for the annual pool and track memberships for residents and non-residents. For those memberships, the last increase was in 2009, and so we felt it was time to build that up or to institute an increase in there, just even if a small one. And then we'll also be increasing the pool rental fee for the Edina Swim Club from $45 an hour to $55 an hour. We're not proposing to increase the daily admission fee for the play park at this time because it's already at the top of the scale in the metro area, yet it remains attractive because we do not charge for adults. So while it's $7 plus tax, other places that they do charge for adults, and beyond that, I just feel like our play park, Adventure Peak, the gym, what we have to offer is really it's superior to what we see in some of the other communities, and there are communities that are building new areas, so we'll have to check those out as well. But for now, for next year, we're not looking at increasing that daily admission fee. As we look at expenses, really salaries, kind of general supplies and contracted repairs are where we see some increases. With the implementation of the compensation plan, we're seeing an increase in the salary expense, but we're also able to attract applicants with more experience and that can handle the high volume nature of Edinboro Park on a Saturday or Sunday when we have several thousand people through the doors on that day. General supplies and equipment, really with increased attendance, we're using more supplies. Some of our smaller cleaning machines are outdated and really wouldn't qualify as CIPs, so we need to pay for them out of the operating budget. There's a couple pieces related to that. And then contracted repairs, we anticipate several smaller projects, again, that would not qualify as CIPs, but some lighting upgrades, pool filter maintenance, and some locker room updating. So those are some of the things that we see in there. The factors we consider that many of the same factors as the Aquatic Center, just what's reasonable, what is reasonable price for the product that we have to offer, what's a good value. Guest requests and feedback, that's another big thing that we use to try to help us figure out what the future looks like for us, and then what improvements have been made or need to be made for the facility. And then comparable facilities, we look at Maple Grove, New Brighton, Golden Valley has a new play park coming, and most of those locations, they've increased their fees recently, but are in the $5 to $6 range.
I'm sorry. I'm losing my voice all of a sudden. I have a few questions on the, not so much Edinboro, but the track and field part of it, because I know when you mentioned like the comparisons, that's obviously more of what you're comparing is like the Edinboro play structure. I was just curious in terms of attendance, how much attendance are coming in terms of the on the daily on the track and pool, resident versus non-resident. Do we know?
I do not know that right off the top. In terms of if someone buys an annual membership, we would know if they're a resident or a non-resident. If they just come in and pay a daily, it's the same whether you're a resident or a non-resident.
So in general, then how many people do we feel like come on average in a day?
I would say we have quite a few swimmers. I would say we're probably at the maybe 30 to 50 people a day.
Because I feel like this is, and I know this is a bigger fish to talk about, but I think that's where I don't feel like we're very competitive in terms of for the price of $7 when you do compare it to something like an Eden Prairie. Obviously, their community center is a lot nicer in terms of their pool, and they have land to do that and all of that. But I think, and I don't know how it works in terms of it, but $7 seems like a lot for a one-time pass to go into use the pool, or if a kid wants to swim inside or something like that. I just was curious in terms of that. And remember last year we talked about the reason we don't want to split up the resident and non-resident because the line gets so long with the little kids. But I don't think it's obviously the same if you're only having 30 or 50 people in there. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of people even know that we even have this facility as an option, and I think it would be great to grow that 30 to 50 to more people, but it would obviously want to make sure it's an attractive places to refer people to go to. Like a guest pass at Lifetime is $5 a day, so that's where I compare that to like, okay, well, $7 for a one-time pass, which is best for me to send my kid just go swim for an hour. I just was curious on that.
Right. And so we haven't really actively been marketing the pool and track memberships because as you alluded to, it's a bigger conversation probably about what we would do with enhancing that area. So at this juncture, we are just trying to kind of make some baby steps that we can do. And the other reason that we haven't been really purposeful in our marketing is just the availability, particularly of the pool. If you're a morning or a noon swimmer, that's great, but the Edina Swim Club is in there every afternoon, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday mornings from 9 to 1. So we also have to have time for the hotel, corporate center, those sort of our other association partners there.
So do we charge the swim teams the same as we do for the aquatic center for that use of that pool?
No, because it's actually because it's 50 meters and 8 lanes at the aquatic center, and it's only 6 lanes and 25 yards. It doesn't quite work out the same per lane. 50 meters is more attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do charge them, I'm assuming?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I didn't see it on here. That's why I was like, so they get it free for this?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
We do charge them.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Patty, I have a question on the P&L just to understand kind of the profitability. So there's a section that says association fee, and again, this is 15 versus 16, and that went up quite a bit. Is that where you're talking about? Would that be driven by the swim team, and what other types of revenue go into that line?
The association fee?
Yeah, because it went up 137,000, 15 to 16. I don't know what it looks like in 17, but. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Looks like it's flat.
It's flat. I was looking at the Centennial Lakes one, so that's my question when we get to that one.
Okay.
Hold that question.
Yeah, so just a little overview.
That's okay.
Little heads up. So on what is the recovery expectations, given that at least in 15 and 16, we obviously have lost money. What are you projecting for 18?
For 18, we're really close to the break-even mark there. I think we were at 95% was our goal. We have been inching up and then slid back just a little bit, but we're making progress each year, I believe, in that. So 95% is what our target is.
Okay, and so you're making progress more on then the cost side of trying to contain the cost, since we're not really doing much with the revenue side, right?
Yes, although birthday parties and daily fees, the attendance continues to really increase, so that's helping us on the revenue side, but yes, containing on the expense side. No other questions? Thank you.
Good evening. Joe Boo, General Manager for the golf course. Briefly go over some of the things that are going on here at the golf course, even as we speak. Construction on the championship golf course started in October of 2016. 2017, we were completely closed the entire year. We had significantly higher than normal rainfall for 2017, which affected the contractor in the construction process. So a good portion of the golf course did not get seeded. We missed a seeding window for this year, which is going to impact us going into next year and could be impact us going all the way to 2019. Construction has gone well. Otherwise, the product that they have been putting forth is very good. It's just the matter of the seed getting in the ground. And just so you know what that equates to, you generally would want 2 growing seasons to open up a new golf course. And that's why we were hoping to have everything planted for this growing season, so we would have the spring, this growing season in the spring. Right now, we're going to have just the spring. So if we have extremely good luck, there's a potential to open up in 2018, but it's not quite looking like that right at this point. So we can hope and knock on wood, but we'll have to see how things go for 2018 and going into 2019. As for the golf course and the driving range and the new Academy 9 golf course, it did extremely well. We did over 23,000 rounds on the new par 3 golf course, which is extremely busy for a par 3 golf course. Just to give you something to compare apples to apples to, all of our year-to-year dates don't coincide very well just because we've changed so much over the last few years. But if you go back to 2014, we did about 14,000 rounds on the executive course. So it's quite a substantial increase from where we were and to where we are right now. Even with the revenue, those 23,000 rounds equated to about $300,000 in revenue. In 2014, the executive course did $195,000. So it did exactly what was planned and what was hoped for. So I think it was a very successful year for us. The driving range is the same scenario. In 2014, we did about $234,000 in range ball sales. This year, we did $328,000. That is actually an increase over where we were in 2016. That is a similar comparison. The only thing is we had an open golf course in 2016, so we did more in range revenue with a closed golf course than we did with an open golf course. So again, positive things for the items that we have open at this point. As for the fees, the fee increases mainly corresponded to the improvements to the golf course. So that's where you're going to see a lot of the adjustments. We did take this opportunity to look where we are and where rates should be. There were a lot of rates in the system that were just improperly made or conceived. So this was an opportunity for us to correct. We did a survey over 35 public golf courses in the region. And we also aligned ourselves with some of the higher end municipal golf courses in the regions like Keller and Bunker Hills are 2 of the ones that we noted in particular. So the fees themselves are aligned with that higher end of the municipals, the greens fees themselves. The golf cart fee kind of increased with us bringing in new golf carts for 2018. Now we are going to have to take a look at that again, just because if we are not going to open up the golf course in 2018, we're not going to bring the new carts in. So we are going to, that could change potentially based on how we come out of the wintertime. Another fee that increased was the handicap fee. That was an increase by the service provider, the Minnesota Golf Association. They added $4 to their fee for the service. So it's a direct cost that we put to the customer that we are not making any additional profit on. Some of the other line items that did increase were to mainly coincide with the industry standard. So the overall budget for the year was negatively impacted by the construction. And so the financials for the year did not look all that great, but if you look at the individual departments that were open, it was a solid year for us. Factors that we consider in making a recommendation, everything kind of corresponded with the upgrade in product. So that was the main reason for that. And the driving range par 3 and the dome rates were all pretty much in line with where they should be, so we didn't make any changes on those. As mentioned, briefly discussed the comparison facilities. We did go through that extensive competitive set, so we do know what other golf courses are charging, so I think our fees that we're proposing are appropriate. And, some of them will not be a specific percentage increase. They'll jump around a little bit, but they are appropriate for what the rate should be. And we try to make it proportionate for our patron cards to make that a little bit more advantageous to purchase the patron cards. With that, that's kind of all I had for the fees. Any questions?
I just have two questions. One's a comment. We probably should get ahead of that news that we might not open in 2018 if we haven't already.
We are actually planning to meet with the City Council to have a conversation with them at the City Council meeting next week. And at that point, we will decide how we want to, continue to message that. However, as Joe mentioned, it is a situation that until we see what spring and early summer weather are like and how we proceed with the 30 days of construction, we're not really going to have an answer, as to exactly when we can open. But we are having that conversation with the City Council next week.
Yeah, I think based off of what we've experienced probably of recent, just the more transparent we can be with the community, especially with that facility and the anticipation, I think that such a large expense and people are excited to come back, and the videos that they've been showing on Facebook are pretty exciting, flyovers of the new course. I think we should try and be as upfront with the community as we can.
We absolutely will. As soon as we have the information and we have an opportunity to share it with the council, we will.
And then the only question I had, and I know you did a ton of work, so excuse me because I'm not a senior, but I saw that there was no senior rates for the weekends, both 18 and 9-hole daily fees. And my only concern is I think one of the groups that was the most concerned about the Fred closing and then Braemar being closed were our senior league members. And so I don't want there to be an opportunity for us to look like we're trying to not bring them back, if that is what potentially would be the perception here. So just wanted to have a little bit more of the kind of the background of what your experience or research sort of why we didn't do that.
That was one of the items that we went with the industry standard. Pretty much not very many golf courses, if any, have a senior rate on weekend. It's something that we offered that nobody else really does in the industry. And this was our chance to correct it with the new fees that we're putting in place.
But maybe just to build on that, in this case, is correcting it the right thing to do? Because I think it would be I agree with what Matt's saying. At least if we said for Edina resident seniors, would we offer the same discounted rate? Because I'm not a big golfer, but the cynic in me says, well, yeah, you don't offer seniors a discounted rate on the weekends because you want to clear them out of the way. We want the other golfers to go through. And I don't want that to be the impression either, right? So I think it might be one that we could say, could we hold that for our own residents at least?
It's something that we can consider, but if you look at the retail industry or different, everybody has.
I understand.
They try and keep it away from their prime times. It was something that was offered in the past, and we can have that discussion, but it is definitely not industry standard.
Yeah.
Just building on that, if we have that discussion, we would need some numbers to go with that, because we want to see how that impacts revenue if we do go down that road. So we
Sure.
should have that as backup. But on building on Matt's comment, I think we should set expectations that 2019 is, could be when it opens. And I totally support doing it the right way rather than the quick way, because we've seen other golf courses open too soon, and it ends up costing a ton of money to fix it.
Correct. And in the city council meeting, we are going to propose different options for opening in 2018. I mean, there's a scenario where we get 9 holes open. There's a scenario where we get 18 holes open with limited play. And as Ann mentioned, we're not going to know that until late spring. So we are trying to get ahead of it now just to give people, I mean, the seating window just kind of hit us last month, and they just couldn't get it down, the seat in the ground. So we're trying to get ahead of it as much as we can as soon as possible, but we do need to get some city council direction as well.
Joe, a couple questions. Was the 15 to 20% increase in the original plan when we were first kind of going through the new construction, the new course construction?
Well, a lot of the rates we monitor based on patron versus non-patron as well. So the patron rates did go up for people who are not our consistent customers and the people who are generally not the Edina residents or our league players. So we always knew that we were going to try and just have a distinction between our solid core customers and the people who are just coming out there once in a while. So there is a smaller increase for patron cards, and there's a larger increase for non-patron cards.
And I'm just trying to remember back when we had the original plan, was that kind of expected that we would take that pretty significant jump? For some reason, I was remembering that things were going to stay relatively flat.
For our core customers,
Yeah.
we're pretty close. We're $5 or less for our core customers, but it's the
non-patron
it's the
cards.
non-patron, the non-core customers that we had the increase on.
Okay. And on the fee structure, did we always have the 4 different age groups? So there's senior, there seems to be an adult, there's a junior, and
We have the senior, the
25-year-old.
junior, the under 25, and those were always in there.
those were all there.
Yep.
Okay, I just kind of look at the greens fees and I start to get confused trying to look at all these different fees you've got on there.
There's a lot
and
of fees.
So I don't know if there's any way to simplify that or if we're just going to keep it as is, but it just seems like there are an awful lot of numbers on there that you got to figure out.
This is the simplified version of it.
That is
so-
the simplified
yes.
version. Okay.
We have been downsizing the different fees over the last couple of years, so this is as simple as you can get without starting to add in twilight rates and all that.
Yeah, okay.
So Joe, just a question on that. So is this, because you did that nice competitive analysis to try to figure out where the fees should land, do you see all the other golf courses have the same delineation then in these kind of groups?
Yeah, these are all pretty standard. The only rate that we're missing out of there is the twilight rate. Some golf courses do offer that adjusted rate in the afternoons. It would not benefit us based on the amount of evening league play that we have to do a adjusted rate in the afternoon. So we haven't pursued that.
Sorry, and this is a little bit just more curiosity. Is there, when you're building these rates, are you going against an expected number of rounds you'd want to play, or are you saying we'll take as many rounds as we can once the course opens? Say, perfect world, 2019, we're open, full, no really restrictions on any of the land and stuff, but
I think for this fee set, I think it was more of a correction to where we should be compared to the different golf courses in the industry. It also does coincide with what we expect to make monetarily with the amount of rounds that we're going to do out here that we're projecting that we're going to do. So the goal is to have 100% cost recovery plus some money to store away for capital needs in the future. So the ultimate goal is to be a little bit better than 100% recovery.
just one easy one. Do you have any more tours that you have planned coming up?
We will definitely do tours in the spring. I don't think anybody else wants to go out there this time of year. It's just been a little bit cold. I think Ann came out there today for a nice, wet, warmer tour than she was expecting. But we will definitely do spring tours. And we do have a lot of ideas to how to create some momentum if we do have the possibility of not opening up. We are coming up with some ideas of getting people on the golf course. There are some avenues where private clubs like Hazeltine, right before the Open or the Ryder Cup they had last year, they had a lot of their members playing off mats for 2 months before the grand openings or the actual tournament. So we have some ideas of how we can keep the momentum going into 2019, and we'll definitely do some more tours because they were very popular. We would see between 30 and 50 people every time we came out.
Just a quick comment. I've been out a couple of times on the tour, and I think it looks great. It seems like the course is going to be, the challenges increased, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you can get out, and I recommend you do so, but don't go with Ann because she gets the golf cart stuck in the mud.
And I'd be more than happy to take anybody out there if you're curious. We can put our big jackets on and go out there and drive around. Car paths are pretty much complete out there, so we can get around the facility. So if anybody's interested in going out and taking a tour, she's correct. The golf course is going to be an extremely good asset for Edina. What they've done so far, like I said before, they've done extremely well, and I think it's going to be great once it gets done, if we can just get done. Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a really quick question, Joe? Sorry. I was just curious if we have any update on what's going on with Tenfish. Just because I figured it was, but wow. Formerly known as Twinfish. I just was curious.
The restaurant formerly known as Tinfish.
I mean, it does affect your budget, so I was just curious.
What we are doing, I don't know if everybody's aware of the process that we went through. We definitely went through this entire year trying to work a remedy for the Tinfish. And we came up with a lot of different scenarios on rent reduction, cam reductions, a lot of different things to additional programming that we did on our part. The Trivia Mafia, the music on the deck were all things that we did on behalf of Tinfish. And at the end of the day, we finally got to the point where we saw that it was not going to work out. And I think once we got to that point, we realized it's in our best interest to move on. So we did take the steps to make Tinfish somewhat whole on their investment that they had in the facility, because they did bring in $400,000 of their own money to invest in the infrastructure in the facility. So I'm sure everybody's seen the payment that we had. So we did get value out of that payment because that paid for the walk-in coolers, the vent systems, and different things like that. So now we have Tinfish out. We have a fresh space ready to go. We're going to go through the RFP process where we are going to hopefully have that done by the end of this month. We'll probably get the RFP on the street hopefully before the end of the year. And then we'll look to get interviews probably in February, and then we're going to hope to award in March. Now, it is going to be a challenge where we are in the golf course, because that is definitely going to impact the new vendor that's coming in. We, as a city, I think, are willing to have some concessions during that time where, you know what, if we don't get open, we'll be able to do some rent reductions. Same thing that we were going to do with Tinfish that they didn't ultimately accept. But I think we will have those conversations and make sure we get a good vendor in here. I think just by the interest level that I've seen, I think we're going to have a very good response to the RFP. We've had a couple of vendors just outright call me and say, hey, what's the deal? When can we get in there? So I think it is a positive thing. I think it's a chance for us to get a vendor in who kind of wants to be there and who's excited about the facility. And it was a learning process for us with the 10 fish as well. We learned what we need to put in the contract. We learned what things that we need to give them and what things we need to keep for ourselves. So I'm very excited. I think we're going to get a better vendor out of this going forward.
Thanks. And I'm sorry, one more second. And I also was curious in terms of the space. I didn't see it in here, but I know we can rent out that space. Actually, I'm going to be there on Friday I hope you are too, Eileen, for our Highlands has an event there, but I wasn't sure, are we renting that out on a regular basis or something like that?
We are still renting it out, and we've contacted our vendors that can do catering.
Okay.
So what we're still doing is we're renting out the room by us, and we're going through our preferred caterers to
Okay, so we are still utilizing that from a revenue
we are
perspective.
still utilizing it.
Perfect.
It's still, the restaurant is dark right now. We do have people coming in to play cards on a daily basis and different things like that, but the banquet area and the meeting spaces, we are still renting out.
I mean, I kind of think back to when we talked about Grandview and how there's all these people in high school kids that talked about how they needed space, that they wanted for Wi-Fi and even meeting space. I mean, if it is just sitting there empty and there's kids that need it, it might be something just to kind of think about how we can.
And actually, for the last 3 weeks, I don't know if you ever attended the Northwoods Boutique, it's been in there.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Okay.
So we are occupying it,
Okay.
and occupancy has been a little bit lower with the construction because our main draw was the view off the back, and it's a little bit dirty right now. So that has decreased a little bit, but we plan that to go right back up.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Now I'm done.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Fees and charges at Centennial Lakes are a little boring this year. We're recommending holding the line on most of our fees, with the exception of our half-day pavilion rental, which would go from $275 to $300. We tend to do larger increases less often, so they average out about 3% a year. But we pretty much raised everything at Centennial, either 2016 or 2017. Our pricing tends to be at the top tier in the metro area for everything we've got. Paddleboat rentals, skate rental, putting course tend to be the highest around. But even in spite of that, we seem to get a good number of people. We've had our 2 record years for the putting course the last 2 years. That's been real strong. Ice skating has struggled the last 2 winters. We're hoping this year it'll bounce back, but the year before that, we did just under $100,000 in skate rental, so we're hoping this is going to be a good year for us now. But everything else, we're just recommending keeping the same, and I'll just take questions.
I'm going to go with that question I had before.
Question there, yeah. Yeah, in 2017, we got a reimbursement of our association fees for that, you know, the chunk on the north end where Pinstripes and the Centennial Shops is. They had fallen in arrears on their association fees with the finance department. They sold last year in the fall, and before the city would sign off on that, they were forced to make good on that payment. So we got a windfall of about $110,000 on that.
So that's in the 2017 numbers, is what you're saying, and that goes into that
2016.
Oh, that was in the 2016, and that's what falls within that association fees. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so it'll go back to more of a normal amount in 2017.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Wasn't there a bridge that we were going to build and then we decided not to? Is there any updates on that?
Yes, our bridge. We are still hopeful for the bridge. We had that out for bids. The bids came in 60% over budget, well over what we had thought was acceptable. We're hoping to put that out for bid again next week, with the price being a little higher than we had hoped, but much lower than the bids were coming in at. Our highest bid, well, the bids ranged from about $1 million to $2.3 million. The engineer's estimate now is closer to $800,000, and we've made some adjustments. I think we can get it down to that. We're hoping to do it in the spring. We're allowing them to choose, either get it done in the spring and have it done by Memorial Day, or start right after Fall into the Arts Festival and have it done by skating season. So, and we won't know that until they actually bid it and we choose the winning bidder.
The adjustments meaning the design or the materials, or what adjustments are we looking at making?
It'll look identical to what it is. We're taking care of a few things in-house with electrical. We're taking out some of the lighting, the ornamental lighting that was on that. We can add that at a later date if we want to. Nothing real major. A lot of it was just finding contractors that understood the project a little more. For instance, the stonework on the outside, some people were bidding that up to $150,000. We've now found bidders that they could easily do it for $60,000, so that'll help us out.
Any other questions for Tom? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have the pleasure of speaking on two facilities tonight, both the arena and the dome, and we're going to start with the arena. This past year, our staff has worked really hard at firming up our fees and having consistent policies with all of our users, and I think we've done a nice job with that. Going forward now, we're trying to fine-tune some things with prime time and non-prime time, and also hours of days, which makes a big difference in the user groups that come in our facility. We deal with a lot of the same issues that the other enterprise facilities work with. Staffing, our staffing costs will be increasing next year. We have the need to maintain the facilities and fix the issues that come up on a day-to-day basis, and there always seems to be a surprise right around the corner. So our fees reflect some of those increased costs. The good thing is that we do have competitiveness for our ice time. If you give up your ice, it will be taken by somebody pretty much immediately. So that's a good problem to have, and it causes us to have a great deal of activity in the facility, especially during those hours after school and into the evening. Generally speaking, with our fees, we tried to keep those within a 3% range. We do tend to be a little bit high as you look around some of the facilities that we compare ourselves to around the metro area. We tend to run about 10% higher during the season, but we also know that we have demand for our ice. During the summer, it's a little bit less than that when everybody tends to be a little bit slower as well. Again, we're trying to define our prime time and our non-prime time. So while some of our fees will be increasing, there will be a number of user groups that actually see a decrease in their costs because we're defining our time a little bit more closely. The other item that we've noted in the past year is that we're starting to get more and more demand for ice time on holidays. I can tell you that we have about 6 hours of ice sold on Thanksgiving, and we've probably turned down 15 hours of ice on Thanksgiving. We're getting requests for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and we are open a number of other holidays. So we decided to put in a holiday ice fee this year, or for 2018. We'll try to provide the opportunity for people, but at the same time we want to remain respectful of our staff, and there are some increased costs with staff time as well on the holidays. With that, I can take questions on the arena.
Does the Hockey Association have I know you've got an hourly rate in here, but do they have a minimum commitment of hours that they're going to take? I just was more curious, how does that work?
That's a great question. On the arena side, no. When we talk about the dome, I can touch on that. The associations that use the dome have agreements in place, 20-year agreements, and they are committed to a certain number of hours. On the arena side, the Hockey Association, the Figure Skating Club, they are not committed to a certain number of hours, no.
And speaking to that, has there been, I guess, some sort of détente between the Figure Skating Association and the Hockey Association? I know maybe a year ago or 2 years ago they were in a little bit of a disagreement over the proportion and amount of time that was being given for figure skating and for hockey, and there was going to be some creative solutions. I wanted to know, is that bubbling up again, or? Or did that get solved with the backyard rink being open?
I think the issue that you speak of is about 3 years ago now. It was actually before my time, but I've heard about it. They tend to take their schedule from 2017 and plug it right into 2018. And once that issue was resolved, it's worked out pretty well. From time to time, particular groups won't be able to use their ice for whatever reason. We always open up that time to the associations first, and then we look for outside groups to take that time. I can tell you in the past year, we've had some maintenance issues at the arena, which caused us to close down some of our ice. Both of the associations have been great working with each other with a little give and take and making that work.
How do we determine, how do we treat our staff to staff these holidays? I'm a little curious about that. Do we force people to work? Do we look for volunteers? Do we pay them double time? If they're forced, do we do it, lowest seniority, or how does that take place?
No, nobody is forced to work. We do take volunteers. We do have a number of staff people that willingly volunteer to do that. Our regular part-time staff members do get extra holiday pay. If one of our full-time staff members come in, they get holiday pay as well per the city policy.
It hasn't been an issue getting the arena staff then when we have requests for ice time?
It has not, but the ice time has also been kind of limited to warnings. Is kind of what we focused on, and at a certain point we say no more. If we would look at pushing that into the afternoon, I think we may have some issues finding staff.
Okay.
And as an employer, we want to be respectful of our employees' time and family time as well.
Yeah, I mean, do we draw a line and say if there's no one volunteering, then it's not offered? Is that what we do, or how do we make that determination?
We're a little bit proactive once we get those requests. We know the couple employees that don't mind working holidays, and we go to them first to make sure that we would have coverage. Yeah.
I had one question on the overall financials. Considering your comments around the competitiveness of the ice time and some growing demand for it, what do you think it will take to get to a break-even position on an operating balance situation?
It's a great question. The ice time is interesting because if we just take a look at this time of year when kids are in school, we're busy from 6 in the morning till about 9 o'clock in the morning. And then there's 6 hours of pretty quiet time from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, which makes sense when kids are in school. But then from 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon through 11 o'clock tonight, we're booked solid on all 4 rinks. So the opportunity for revenue is really either in increasing your fees or finding creative ways to fill that dead time that you have.
What creative ways have you used in the past for those dead times?
So we've looked at discounting ice, but I can also tell you that that's very competitive. There are rinks around the metro area, some of our competitor rinks, that offer ice at a rate that's not even break even for us. And we can go down that road because sometimes some revenue is better than no revenue. But I disagree with that at times.
I was just curious. I know that there's some homeschool associations that are often looking for things like that. So I wasn't sure if there are different avenues that we have looked at already or could look at.
Yep, and we do pick up some of that ice time. Homeschools, daycares, a business from time to time will do a little office party type thing, but it's really quite sparingly that they can afford to do that.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
And if I could just jump in on one thing too. One of the conversations that we continue to have internally is cost recovery expectations and exactly how that cost recovery expectation is calculated. And that's something that we've talked about for the last several years, and we are going to be working on very closely with our finance director. We have a new finance director. How long has Don been with us? I lose track. 3-4 months, maybe?
Couple months.
Yeah, it hasn't been terribly long. But one of the conversations that we've had significantly over the last years and have had with Don as well is how is depreciation handled? You know, when you look at the operating loss that we're showing for the arena, for, say, 2016, we have a $623,000 line item for depreciation. And that is something that is completely out of the control of staff. It, depreciates facility improvements. So when you look at those numbers, factor that depreciation number in as well, because it's not an actual operating expense.
Right.
It's not something that can be controlled by our staff. Without that depreciation number in there, the arena numbers look pretty good.
Yeah, and
as do
that's-
the rest of our facilities.
Yeah, I mean, they're almost all cash flow positive.
Exactly.
But you do have to pay for that depreciation somehow, or you just keep asking for us to pay for it, right? So-
Well, it's a line item. So just worth noting.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions on the arena? So we'll switch over to the dome side of things. Again, similar, the dome falls under my guys when it's up, when the field is available, then it falls under Park and Rec. So basically from November 1st through the first week of May, the dome falls under my responsibilities. We do have some agreements in place with the associations, baseball, football, lacrosse, and soccer, that limit any increases to 3% a year. We are very competitive when we look around the metro area with our fees. They're not out of line, and in some instances they are lower. We also get requests for quarter field usage, so that's something that we did this time around in 2018, is formalized that. And then we also get requests for late night time that we're defining after 9 o'clock, and we're giving a 20% discount on that. And again, that's pretty common around the metro area of other facilities doing that, and we want to stay competitive with them. So the dome's a little bit simpler than the arena, and I'll take questions on the dome.
I have a silly question. In terms of like the prime time, like the hourly, is that, and I know the dome pretty well, so in terms of that, is that like per field or per section of the fields, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we can split the dome three ways. You can rent the full field, you can rent half a field, or you could rent a quarter of a field.
Okay. So are the fees on here? Oh, I see. That's on the upper part. But for the association, the prime times, that's for the whole dome?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I was curious on. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. I am going to be speaking on the senior center charges and fees, as well as the pickleball for adult activities and the community gardens. So I have compared our facility for the senior center to other facilities nearby, including Hopkins, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Farmington, where I came from before I started here, as well as Elk River, just kind of a gamut of places. And we are actually remarkably low for some of our charges, including our membership. So I am recommending that we go up $3 for an individual to $20, and then the same for the couples. So instead of $27, it would be $30. And we have, in the time that I've been here, I've added some membership benefits, including a membership appreciation week where we have popcorn we offer to our members every day. We have some really good programming that we offer almost daily, and that it's above and beyond the regular ongoing activities, as well as our classes that we are adding. So I feel that the membership value is there, and it's time for us to increase. I actually tried to find the last time the membership has gone up, and I cannot find when that happened the last time, and we've been in our current location since 2002. So the cost of staff increases, the newsletter cost, the cost of coffee consumption amongst our members has gone up. So I feel that it's time to look at increasing that number. I've also looked at room rentals within our facility. They have continued to increase at our center. So in 2016, in September 2016, we had brought in $15,850, and by September of this year, we have already brought in, or had already brought in $19,659, but we are still lower charges for some of our rooms than what other senior centers are charging. And we do have to have staff for after hours, because our hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. And a lot of our rental requests come in the evening and on the weekends. So with that said, I have requested that recommended that we break the Grandview room, which is our largest room, apart from our classrooms, because right now we charge one solid fee for all of those. And then our fireside room, which is our second largest space, and the kitchenette, I think that should also increase because we are significantly lower than other facilities within the surrounding area. And then I have added some new items. The classes are all new for the fees this year, or for recommendations for 2018. And another, value added for the senior center. And pickleball is also new for 2018. We dabbled in it this year, and we feel that there is enough interest and it's increasing in popularity that we can, again, offer it next year to quite a few people. And then just a small increase for the community garden, just with the increase in staff time that's required there, as well as some supplies needed to have it maintained.
So Nicole, you did, it sounds like you did some competitive analysis to
Yes.
determine the fees. So the current fees you're proposing, are those in line with what you see in the other surrounding areas, or would we still be lower than what they have? Or?
For our membership, we would still be a little lower. Hopkins, as a comparison, for an individual is $28, and for a couple it's $44. So, but I don't want to increase it too much, just because our current membership is so used to that rate that I feel that a gradual increase is better than kind of giving them too large of an increase.
Okay, and then on the offerings, it sounds like you're adding things and changing things around. How would you compare that to what you see in the other surrounding areas and what's being offered?
I would say that I'm kind of adding a lot more than what I've seen at a few other centers, but this is my third senior center that I've worked at. And the clientele here, we're continuing to grow. Edina is a growing population for those 55 and older. And so our membership from last year was at 1,101 members, and to date, we are at 1,488 members. And that number I get new memberships daily. So.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
I heard you mention that, I'm sorry, one second.
Yeah.
I heard you mention that Hopkins has an individual as well as a couple rate. Do we look at doing that or just keeping it as an individual only?
We do offer both. We offer 17 for an individual and 27 for a couple. So my recommendation is to go to 20 and 30.
I thought it was for member versus non-member. Okay. I mean, resident versus non-resident. Or do we have a different rate for resident versus non-resident?
We don't.
Okay.
No, it's all one fee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other?
So just to follow up on that then, because Cora and I noted the same thing. So in the comments there, it says member/non-member rate. Is that supposed to be single couple?
No, so the non-member rate is for activities that people come to. So let's say I have a presentation, and as a membership benefit, it's free to the member, but then for non-members, I'm recommending that we have a non-member rate so that it encourages people to become a member of the senior center.
No, okay, I understand. I'll be more clear then. Under the fee that says Edina Senior Center membership,
Okay.
it says member/non-member rate. And from your last answer, I wonder if you meant that to say single/couple.
I think you are correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Just another curious question. So the community gardens, I know they're the ones over by Yorktown, is that correct? Where
Yes,
they're
Yorktown
located?
Park, correct.
And I know that the schools all have them, but there's a random garden at Lewis Park. Is that part of the community garden stuff, or is that just something that maybe some residents popped up, or is that something that's just a legacy thing that's just sitting there?
That is a separate thing. Is that?
It's the edible playground. Yeah, park program
So,
uses it.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what they called it, yeah. That was like the grant for it. I think it was probably like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
It's been a while.
Is there any opportunity to get those added to any other parks?
I don't know, I can look. I can look into it.
Yeah, would you? Thank you. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tiffany Bushlin here to speak to you about a variety of different fees that we have throughout the different parks. Just as my colleagues mentioned, there's a wide variety of things that we look at that go into these fee recommendations that you're viewing tonight. Cost analysis of each of our programs, the staffing costs, looking at the surrounding communities, the surrounding cities not only, but also the community education things that the school district does and the school district properties as well as for some of our programs, the enrollment, the space usage that the program uses, the maintenance and upkeep for that space. So the first thing that I'll talk about is the youth programs, which is page 1 of your fees. Fees are relatively meaning the same for most of our youth programs. There were some slight increases as a result of some staffing costs, some busing costs or supplies. You'll even see one line item, we're adding superheroes to our superhero event or adding a princess to one of our princess events. So our youth program fees are very comparable to surrounding communities and community education programs. Another thing that I'll talk about tonight is the adult leagues. The adult leagues are found on page 2 and 3 of your packet. You'll notice that most of these are bolded. We removed the tax from these fees. As Susan mentioned earlier, all the fees that you're viewing tonight have the tax removed. So that was the biggest change for these adult leagues, is that we are removing the tax. The tax will still be charged for these, but it'll be charged on top of that fee. There is one minor change for women's volleyball that increased to $20 per team. We were not breaking even on that program, and it's seen as a value-added program. We want to at least break even in order to offer it, so increasing that fee by $20 to break even. These adult leagues are comparable to surrounding communities. I've put together some details. We compare to St. Louis Park, Eden Prairie, Bloomington, Minnetonka, Richfield, just to see that we're on track with what we're offering. You'll see some new fees in there. I hope to get a kickball league going this summer at Van Valkenburg Park, as well as trying out a soccer league and a fall softball league. So there are a few new fees listed there in the adult league section. The next piece that I'll talk about is the general park areas found on page 12 and 13 of your packet. You'll see just a few different fees that I'd like to highlight throughout that. There's an addition of a new fee for a maintenance and custodial fee. We have found that we'll have some rentals or things that happen on the weekends where we'll have to bring in additional staff in order to facilitate some custodial needs or some maintenance field prep needs. And so that fee is in place to kind of recoup our costs on what we're losing staffing wise there. There's also addition of a new fee for a non-resident field rental. So we've seen that there's a few spaces throughout our parks that maybe we could utilize a little bit better. So offering that non-resident rental fee to make us more marketable to other people as well. There's some minor increases for Arneson Acre Park rentals that you'll see. I'd just like to highlight as well, talking a little bit about the athletic associations. You'll notice that we spelled out in the fees for you that the athletic associations are charged field rental for tournaments. That's nothing new, but that is something that they are charged for. I'd also like to speak about we're recommending an increase for $13 per participant for 2019. This fee was actually passed last year. However, associations have to be notified within a year in advance of increasing that fee. Therefore, last year they were not notified, so the fee was not increased for them. So I'm asking for it to be passed again and that they would actually be notified and the fee would then increase for them. Then there's two other fees that I would like to bring to your attention. We are proposing a mobile food unit fee. So as most of you are aware that mobile food units and food trucks are very popular. So we are partnering with the health division, the City of Edina Health Division, and the Planning Division, just to make sure that these mobile food units are licensed, first of all, in the City of Edina. The idea behind having a food truck or a mobile food unit at a park would be they would have to be first of all be licensed by the health department and through the City of Edina. Within that license, there's several different versions of a license they can have. They can do a one-time special event license, or they could do a yearly license. And then they would be within that process. They get inspected by the fire department to make sure that the mobile food unit is safe. So the fee that we're proposing is that if they want to be in a park property. So we have a list of several parks that we think they're fitting to be in. So that fee, that $30 fee, would be to be in the park for 1 day. So it's a great way for us to actually understand what's happening in our parks. So mobile food units aren't just showing up with us being unaware that they are there. So it's a way for us to kind of make sure that, first of all, that they're safe, and second of all, that we know that they're happening. Is there any questions in regards to the mobile food unit?
Would that also apply to neighborhood parties where they might do that at a park and invite a food truck in? Or does that just apply to tournaments and athletic associations?
Nope, the proposed fee would apply to anybody that would be inviting a mobile food unit into a park.
Okay.
So if it's on the street near the park? I've had them for 10 years. I'm curious. And we don't go on the park, but it's right by there.
That's a great question. Susan, maybe you want to chime into that one?
That's probably a bit of a gray area. Again, the purpose of this is really for us to get a better handle on
Pamela.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I'm just curious on it.
Yep. So food trucks that are just showing up in the parks. As far as on the street, I would think there would need to be some okay from the police department, something on that, just to park a food truck in the street. But I'm not sure on that either.
It's usually the power comes from a resident's home, so that's where I would think that they wouldn't need to, but I'm not sure on that.
I think a lot of the neighborhood parties use them. That's why I'm asking.
Mm-hmm.
Block parties.
Yeah. I do have a question on that in terms of how we're holding them accountable. Is there like a ticketing for people who don't? Because it seems to be the case.
Yeah, our plan is to have a citation if they don't follow the rules. That they would get a citation for that.
Perfect.
You talked about weekend maintenance fees. Yeah. I was just wondering about some of the facilities, namely some of the outdoor rinks in Van Valkenburg. Do we have any plans, or do we have any ideas of how to do maintenance, say during, say, like a four-man league in hockey? The first couple rinks probably chew up that ice pretty well. Is there a way that we could have someone come and spray it so that the ice is nice, or have them spray it after the four-man's done so that the rest of the community comes back and there's actually not chipped up ice? Same kind of idea for Van Valkenburg. You've got Monday nights you got a doubleheader league, so you got on all three fields you got like 12 or 16 games, I guess, 12 games being played. So is there an opportunity to have, I know from my own experience, I would have been great to be able to get into the service shed so we could rake the field last year. So is there some opportunities there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been having a lot of conversations with our maintenance staff. And actually this last fall, we had to get our fall softball in, and they were gracious enough to rotate some of their part-time staff to be later in the day so that we were able to, we had some heavy rain, so we had to have some work done in the fields prior to playing. So we we agreed to transition some of that maintenance staff to start a little bit later so that we were able to, do some work on the fields later into the evening. That's a conversation that I'll continue to have with them. We do have a lot of part-time seasonal staff, so I'm hopeful that we can make some improvements, that we can do some things later into the evening, but it's an ongoing conversation.
Just one more comment on the food truck thing. If we do go down that route, I think we need to let citizens know that, because seriously, a lot of the neighborhood block parties use them. And if we don't let them know as they're trying to arrange trucks to come in, there could be a lot of confusion. So we should probably put something on the city website and make sure residents are aware that we're changing policy in a significant way. I mean, let them know in a significant way, not that we're changing policy.
I think it's just adding it to the park, because if you have a block party, there's a block party form, so maybe it would be a part of that.
Yep, and anybody that, and food trucks are allowed throughout the city as long as it's for a special event, so we would be, this permitting process would be for them having them specifically in the parks.
Yeah, and Eileen, I would just like to add, so we are kind of working out some of those details. We just wanted to make sure that we got the fee approved, so when we have worked out the details, we could go ahead and implement. So we'll make sure that we communicate what the procedure is moving forward for everyone. Yeah, so we worked directly with our community health division and the planning division on these mobile food units, and working with them on that permit process.
Susan, they would get a permit though if they were in the city, right? Like if they're at their block party, did they get inspected and make sure that from a health and safety perspective they were fine before, or is that new?
They should be. So any food truck that is operating in the city of Edina should be licensed through our community health division. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I would have just hoped that would have happened. And then now if they want to be in a park, then that seems easy enough because they were getting licensed anyways, and then they can describe to them the additional fee, right? Yeah.
Say, Tiffany, I've got one question on the volleyball fees on page 2.
Yep.
And thank you for using the pages to help direct me through my long list of fees. Just curious as to why you said you raised the fees on the officiated women's league, and just curious as to why that's still 22% lower than the co-rec officiated league.
That's a great question. Currently, we're playing a different length of season. So I think that is why the fee is higher. The goal would be to make it the same length of season and then in turn offer 2 different programs. So I'll offer the season twice, so an early season and a late season. But yes, it is significantly higher, I would agree.
Okay, because you have them both listed here as 1 time a week, 10 weeks. So it looks like the duration is the same on each of them.
Yes, and currently we're playing a 12-week co-rec season.
Oh, okay, even though it's listed as 10 weeks?
Yep, so it'll be a 10-week season next year.
So it's a 10-week season and still at a premium.
Mm-hmm. It's a great league.
I know, I'm paying that premium. Thanks.
The other thing I noticed on here is it says that we added the $20 to break even, but it's not listed in the $275.
Because the tax was removed, so the tax is going to be about $20 as well. So the fee looks the same even though the tax was removed. So it went up $20. But the tax was removed, so it looks like it's the same fee.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No.
And then there's another fee that I haven't talked about yet that I'm proposing is an association camp and clinic fee. So camps and clinics done through associations are additional training for the different associations. Our associations do pay a per participant fee for each participant, as well as they pay to host any tournaments that they would have. I'm proposing this fee because it's taking away some space that we could actually program during the day, and in turn, it's giving additional training for the different associations that are utilizing it. There's a cost of field maintenance. That there's some wear and tear on those spaces, additional wear and tear besides their leagues and practices. So I'm proposing the fee of $50 per field per day for a camp or clinic. So this would be a new fee. I'm open to any conversation that you would like to have regarding that.
Do we
like
need
to-
a year-long notification process for that new fee or not?
I've been talking to them and told the associations while they're planning their summer that this is a proposed fee and that could be an option. So it's not a full year, but it would affect them next summer. Yeah.
And I just want to make sure to point out that we wanted to call your attention to this and really get some feedback, if you have any, because it is a new fee. The athletic associations are somewhat concerned about it. We do feel that it is standard practice. Tiffany and Susan did a fair amount of research. It's in addition to the typical programs that they do. So we're just interested in any feedback that you might have.
Well, and considering that we're about to also start a field utilization study because we seem to be over capacity on our field usage, I think it seems like a fine and reasonable fee.
Well, it's only going to be applied when there's a special extra circumstance.
Right.
So, makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for being here this evening.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Okay, well, we need to actually approve the fees. Is that true? That's
Sorry,
what it says here.
can I just make one quick comment? I just want to make one quick comment about the fees, and this goes to I think the work plan for next year too, about communication. You know, we've got all these really great ways for us to collect revenue from the residents and from non-residents through our park and recreations programs. I was on the city website today for something completely different, but then I was like, oh, park board meeting, I'll take a look. It is near impossible to find these programs on our website. And I know that we just redid our website and stuff like this, but I mean, this is the revenue generation that we do to pay for parks maintenance, to keep our city green, and then also going through the exercise of looking at the 2008 comprehensive plan and keeping us up to Edina standards and stuff like that. I would encourage us as a group to advocate as loudly as we can to the communications department or whomever is doing our website design to try and find a way to bring this to the forefront, because this is the nuts and bolts of what we as a park and recreation department should be looking to do, is drive as much revenue as possible and make it as easy for our residents to transact. So that's more of a comment, I think, at this point. But
So on this item, and just to make sure you have what you need, you don't need us to approve it, but if we had any concerns, should we voice those? I just want to make sure we have, because in the note it says, you request a review and recommend the proposed from the Park and Rec Commission.
Yes, that's correct. We're just looking for a review and recommendation. If there are any comments in addition to the ones that you already made, or anything specific that you would like to point out, we'd be happy to take those notes and make the City Council aware.
Okay, so any other comments before we move on to the next item?
Sorry, the only other thing, and I think Greg, I thought, had a really good idea. I'm concerned about not offering senior programming at the golf course when we do open on the weekends. I think, at least in my experience, or just listening to, the leagues that are playing at Braemar were mostly senior leagues, right? And those people use the golf course other times in just their league. They're our most ardent supporters of that facility, and they had to leave. They had to leave our community, basically. I mean, I know they had some of the leagues on the academy course, but they went to Dewan or to Highlands or some of the other local facilities around here. So I just, I think Greg's idea of making a senior rate for residents, I know it makes it complex because there's so many different age groups and stuff like that. I think it's something we want to definitely consider, because I think it behooves us to incent that group to come back and not feel that we're not listening to them or trying to, do some sort of, I guess, for lack of a better pun, course correction on our pricing. At this time, it's really about trying to bring back all those residents that were displaced during the year and a half that we were closed. So that would be the biggest thing. Otherwise, it all kind of made a lot of financial sense to me.
Yep, no, I think that'd be a good idea too. And the only other point I had looking through this, and it's a minor one, but I tend to be more for simplicity. And when I see things that are $65.10 and $54.80, it's like, why not just $64? No, this is without tax, because then tax is on top of that.
Then it'll be a round number.
Then it'll be a round number.
Yeah.
So we've already backed it into it, and we've gotten all those details done.
Previous years, that's the only reason why I knew that.
Okay, no
Nice.
problem.
We've done the work for that.
Okay, so that comment back to Joe, but anything else before we move on? Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to the next item, which is the Art and Park design process.
Thank you very much. If you recall, the City Council, Parks and Rec Commission recommended the Art and Park Concept Plan. The City Council approved the Art and Park Concept Plan and the Memorandum of Understanding with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. Last week, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers approved the concept plan and the Memorandum of Understanding with the city. And when the City Council approved our concept plan and the Memorandum of Understanding, they asked staff from both the city and the Watershed District to come back with a detailed public engagement process that we would use to engage residents throughout the design process of the Art and Park plan. And that's what I have before you this evening. I'd like to go through it just very briefly and see if you have any questions or comments on this proposed plan. My intention is to take your comments and your recommendations and make a recommendation to the City Council next week. We are going to be moving forward fairly rapidly with this plan. As you can see, I know you all have a copy of this in front of you. We would be starting the design and engineering phase of this project in December of this year. And our first intention to have a public process would be at the completion of the 30% design phase. So that would take place in January. We would hold an open house probably prior to a Parks and Rec Commission meeting here at City Hall. Then we would make a presentation of that 30% design to the Parks and Recreation Commission. We would present that to the City Council and then to the Minnehaha Creek Watershed Board after that. With the feedback that we receive from those presentations, we would then move into the 50% design phase. We're then suggesting that we take a meeting, a public open house to the park. We propose to do that in early May to try to get feedback on that plan. Then after that, we would come back and report to the Parks and Recreation Commission, the City Council, and the Minnehaha Creek Watershed Board again. At that point, using the feedback that we receive from that part of the process, we would move to the 90% design phase. And again, hold a similar process. We're suggesting that we would hold another open house in the park. And with these open houses in the park, I would like to work with my recreation staff to kind of have an event to try to have something going on in the park along with this that would draw families to want to attend these open houses. So that one would occur on or around August 25th of 2018. Again, then we would follow up with a Parks Commission meeting, City Council meeting, and the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board taking action. The other really big things that I would like to point out that would also be happening concurrently with the design phase of the park is the design phase of the shelter building and the design phase of the playground. Those would be also very significant processes that would involve public engagement, and I would also hope that we would be able to put together a working group of Parks and Rec Commission members, staff, and a select group of residents to participate in those processes. Just to give you an idea, the shelter building process, I would expect to start as early as February of this year. So we need to, between now and February, get an architect hired, get a working group selected, and we'll be able to start working on a shelter building design as early as February. So that's pretty exciting. Also for the playground design, I would expect a similar process. working group with staff, Parks and Rec commissioners, and a neighborhood group. And that process wouldn't have to start until a little bit later in this year, probably August or September. So I'm curious to hear your feedback if you feel that this is something that would be suitable for community engagement for the Arden Park Concept Plan.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're doing it in the park. I think that will help bring in a lot of the families that support this that don't make it to the meetings. And it's just a good way for them to get the feel of what it's going to actually be like, and how it's going to impact their use of the park. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
I was going to agree with that sentiment. My only concern about Saturdays, specifically the August 25th date, I know that that's kind of that month when all people's summer activities are, we're kind of getting down to the rubbery meat in the road a little bit, and a lot of people take that time for vacations or
State fair.
Yeah, and cabins. So my only concern would be on a Saturday, are we going to get, people are going to back into well, you didn't communicate because people didn't come because we offered it on a time that's a little bit less of a chance of people to show up. So that's my only concern. But certainly having the park is awesome. I mean, it gets people that visual, be able to kind of lay everything out and kind of show them what we're thinking about. So
thank you. I appreciate that. And I can assure you we had a lot of that conversation as we're putting this plan together. We have some interesting meetings between Park Board and City Council in August and September, and it got really tricky. We have a pretty tight schedule, but these dates certainly aren't set in stone. If you have any other recommended dates that would kind of meet the same time frame, we're certainly open to hearing them. If there's a better day of week, we're certainly open to that as well.
I'm just wondering about, just because of the state fair alone, just maybe even the weekend before, I'm not sure if that's going to fit in the schedule, but it still interferes with weekends in the summer, but at least it's not the state fair on top of it. That's the only suggestion I can.
School could be in session too. It'll be the weekend before school starts. We decided to go before Labor Day.
Oh.
This year it's supposed to, or next year it's before. This year.
Okay, we'll take a look at that date, and maybe we'll just leave it open on the schedule.
The only other thing I thought of, Ann, looking at this is maybe suggest that you really think about how you communicate the expectations of what the community what kind of input they can give. Because when you get to that third meeting and it's 90% done, they're really just reviewing what's been decided, right? So we don't want them showing up thinking we get a chance to really have some input. So you might think about how you communicate some strong or some concise verbiage at each of those meetings. You will have a chance to do this at this meeting, this at this meeting, this at this meeting.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Otherwise, we'll hear yeah, sure, they told us what they were going to do, but I made it to the third meeting and I couldn't give any input.
Thank you. That's a good point.
And to piggyback on that, I think the more we can do to communicate how we're communicating will help us if we get to the end and we have community members who are saying, I didn't know there wasn't an opportunity. If with this, there's sort of a plan about how we're getting the message out and that we can continue to say back to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially if the Sun Current has been a way that we've communicated in the past, I know, and now they've made it a mail service. And if you went to the website and opted in to go to the mail service, it was actually an ad server that was collecting information to spam your email account. So there might be less circulation of the Edina Current as Sun Current as it used to be just free in your driveway. So now that they've gone to mail, so something to think about when we're talking about the ways we communicate or the way that we talk to our community members.
But I think overall this is really exciting, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping to keep you and Eileen engaged throughout the next phase of the process. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks, Ann.
Actually, you know what, Brenda? I was looking for a review and recommendation on this as well.
Okay, so with that, do you need a vote, or is it just, okay. So as presented, with maybe changing that one date to yeah, like an open date, end of August. Just do, let's see, I'll make the motion to approve as Ann presented.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is just a quick update on where we are with the comprehensive plan. We have a meeting coming up on Thursday morning as a working group to put some recommendations together for that. And I know each of you had some homework about reviewing either different chapters and then going through the park section. Greg has volunteered to chair that working group, so I'm going to turn it over to him on next steps.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. So 4 of us, I think we're all 4 signed up to go Thursday. You going to be there, Corin? Is that right? That's your plan? All right. Okay, so I think we have Brenda, Corin, Eileen, and I are scheduled to be there to represent our commission on Thursday. So we have our nice light homework that hopefully we've all done, or at least gotten a chance to go through some of it maybe. Overall, the ask that we have in front of us is to assess 2008 comp plan with 3 questions. What we see in there, the sections and the recommendations in 2008, are they still relevant and they should be included in 2018? Are they relevant but they should be updated, and then give a recommendation of how we want to update it? Or should we eliminate it altogether from the plan? And then the 4th question would be, are there new goals that may not have been considered 10 years ago that could be from our strategic plan or other things that we want to make sure are added in, right? So what, I guess one thing, Ann, you might help me, what's expected on Thursday that we should make sure we're prepared for from tonight?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think that an expectation that everyone has read the chapter, and I think probably to figure out how you intend to move forward with changes. I think if everyone has read it and you have an opportunity to start compiling changes, to discussing concepts and those sorts of things, I think it's probably not too early for that, to actually start making some edits to the document or some suggested conceptual changes. I guess the other thing that I would maybe suggest too is looking back at the park's strategic plan and have any ideas of specific sections that you want to make sure that, obviously we're not going to copy the strategic plan into the comprehensive plan, but if there are any areas that we feel that are new that need to be highlighted or referenced, I think that might be a good review prior to that meeting as well.
So let me just, if I could, stop and just take a poll of each of us. We were each asked to review 2008. And I think we're also each given a section of another commission's plan to look to see where there might be interrelation, interaction, connections. So if I could, let me just do a quick survey starting with Eileen. What have you been able to do so far? What inputs might you have prepared? We have an electronic means that we can be gathering that input, that if you've done that, we can send that to staff, and that could help us prepare for Thursday. If everything's still kind of between your ears, then we have some work to do to get it out and make it useful for Thursday or beyond. So,
yeah, on the comprehensive plan, I just went through and looked at the current goals, and like one in particular had maintain existing facilities, and I just thought that's kind of like a given to me. We have existing facilities that need to be replaced. Yeah. And I think we need to be more specific with that goal going forward, because it speaks to, the funding isn't there, and we have to put an emphasis on that, I think. We have, 5 or 6 parks that still, their buildings are, 20, 25 years old. So as a goal, I just think we need to either replace or improve existing building facilities. So I'm looking at things like that as I look at the goals. Let's be more specific about what we need to do, because maintaining to me isn't even aspirational.
Right.
So I was looking at it from that point of view, and then there's a lot of, it seemed like current policies, a lot of the feasibility of acquiring new land, the feasibility of partnerships with adjoining communities, and yet I don't remember that ever being really discussed in the last year and a half. So are those ones that we should eliminate and or word them in a different way so that there can be more action on them? Or maybe limit the amount of policies and goals we have so that we're not just putting words on paper that really we don't have the capacity to move forward on.
Okay. Julie?
So I filled out the spreadsheet, which, and maybe I was doing it wrong, appeared to be focused mostly on the goals and policies, but it did seem like the first chunk of the chapter was background information similar to what's in the strategic plan, and it seems like, I know we're not supposed to be replacing it with the strategic plan, but it seemed like a lot of that should be taken out and replaced with the strategic plan, so there wasn't a place for feedback on that, but most of what I felt while reading it was like, well, is this still true? And does it make sense in here? I also read the Chapter 5 housing plan, and I just thought that they were very different. The housing plan, like, physically is so much smaller than our parks plan, and there wasn't much about how we could incorporate the parks into it, and I'm happy to provide you feedback in writing, but they also just took a very different approach to how they put together their housing chapter, and I don't know if that was a theme from the previous comprehensive plan where the chapters were just very different, but there's so much detail in the parks plan and a lot less in the housing plan.
I think that was identified as an issue.
Okay.
For the comment, I actually found the opposite. There was a lot more in the trans, but it had mostly to do with the roads, the biking on roads, so it really didn't pertain so much to the parks. But it was the opposite of what you found.
So I guess I have the chapter assessment tool with my comments, but it did seem like there was just a lot of detail and background information here that no longer seemed up to date, and a lot more specifics than there were in the housing plan too. So.
And I know to that point, and Ann, I don't know if you have any insight on this or not, but we're told there'll be someone else that's writing all these chapters and putting it, and so is that the piece they'll be writing as well, that introductory section, and we just focus on kind of the goals and strategies, goals and policies? How do they get that information and to be able to write that as we might want it to be done?
That's a great question, and yes, that is my understanding. We will have a member of the Planning Commission. It will not be Todd, but I believe that it will be John Hamilton from the Planning Commission that will be at our meeting on Thursday. So that's a great question. We haven't asked that. In what format would you like to receive it? I think that we could probably do it in whichever format you all feel is easiest for you to complete this work, whether it's handwritten notes or an electronic format. But that's a great question. We haven't asked that. I think we should ask John that question on Thursday morning, see if he knows.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'd be happy to get the answer as well if John doesn't know.
Okay.
Who's going to be writing that? Doing the writing?
We have a consultant that we've hired, and they're going to be writing the entire document, so there will be more consistency of at least the content and tone and, those sorts of consistencies throughout the document.
Brenda?
So I have reviewed the chapters I was supposed to, and then I went through our park open space natural resource chapter, and I agree they're all very different, and I think we can make ours a lot better and easier to understand. I think a lot of the policies in here aren't really even policies and shouldn't even be highlighted as policies. And we might even just say that these are the park policies, not for every single particular initiative, but that's just an idea of how some of the others put it together. I think we have a lot more work than I had originally anticipated. I don't think the last document was done very well. It was just too much, like the goals. There's too many goals. And I like the way that our strat plan kind of breaks it into, I think maybe 4 main goals. And I think we can work with that and maybe only have to add one separate one. So I'm really glad we did the strat plan. I think it's going to be really helpful, but it will be a lot of coordination, I think, with the person writing it to make sure that they pick up the changes, because I don't think it'll just be take this out or put it in. I thought it was difficult to use this particular form because it wasn't like that, like just take that goal out or add that goal. But I think we can work on that on Thursday to figure out how we can best present it.
Yep.
So, and yeah, I think if you have those formats, if you can send those to us or to Janet, so we can have those printed out for Thursday, I think that will be helpful. Julie.
I was just going to say that I guess I agree. I mostly felt like I was using this form to provide notes in the margins here about my thoughts. Yep.
And I would say that's okay. Use the form however you want to use the form, and if you want to edit the form in any way to make it more useful to you, go ahead and do that as well. And Janet, do you mind collecting if we email to you? Okay. Please email your forms to Janet.
Oh, and the other thing I was going to mention, I know that we've had people reviewing those other chapters. What I thought we should do is give that to the Planning Commission person, and he can give those to the other commissions. Rather than us having to coordinate anything, at least, and then they can come back maybe with comments saying, no, we didn't incorporate that, or we like that idea, and then we can work from that. But because I'm assuming that maybe we'll get something from them as well, saying, hey, we think that this is important to the park and rec. Does that sound okay? At least from a start, just for initials.
Absolutely, I think that sounds great.
Okay.
Pat?
No, I'm not assigned to one.
Okay. Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I'm not assigned to one either, but I would like to say, I think the work that's been done subsequent to the comprehensive plan on our part is the strat plan. So I think a lot of this can be reviewed in light of that, and it doesn't mean we take the exact verbiage, but maybe we do. But a lot of it's been refined, and I think we can, as long as we use that as a stepping stone to whatever we're going to proceed along with here, I think that makes some sense. So.
Yep.
And then just a quick note, like if you can look through the Park and Rec one and just read it, and if there is something that jumps out, just make sure you give us your feedback. Don't worry about any of the other chapters.
Sure.
Especially because you're new, so kind of fresh eyes, that would be great. And then Dan, since you've been involved for it longer, I think that could be helpful to us too, like if you just have some ideas on how to simplify it. Okay.
All that history.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
I kind of have similar feedback in terms of what you guys have shared already. I did put it all together, but I was going to bring it on Thursday, so I didn't bring it tonight to go through, but I had a similar thing. They don't feel like they're consistent across the board. And I remember we talked about this before, like it was a book and before we tried making it executive summary, but it still kind of made it bookish. So I think that there's definitely an opportunity to make it better. So I'll bring that on Thursday.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. I hope Janet is willing to do it since I sent my stuff to her. But I'm not too dissimilar than what everyone else has said. I thought some of the things make sense, but they need to be tweaked for what we're looking at in 2017. Certainly in 2008, there wasn't Weber Woods, there wasn't Fred Richards, there wasn't this Arden project. So certainly those type of things, at least for some of the feedback I gave, was biased toward we've got now these new large green spaces that are being redeveloped, and how do they affect what 2017 and the next 10 years looks like. Generally that was what I had. I thought there was some stuff that just needed to be tweaked. I think one of the concerns I had, and I kind of brought it up earlier, was there was a goal that talks about how we want to maintain thing into the fashion of Edina. I would challenge anyone that has talked to anyone that's ever lived outside this community to determine or define what that fashion is, because I think we may have one definition of that fashion. You might find other community or non-resident people might have a different definition of that. So while I totally agree with that sentiment of, keeping the parks updated, when the pool talks about repainting the walls and stuff like that, while it's not an amenity that everyone's going to get excited about, it keeps us best in class. So those are the type of things I understand in what would fit underneath that fashion thing. So something like that would be rewritten. And the other thing, which I know that you guys kind of just banging the drum again, as I do so often in these meetings, but I'm really concerned about in 2017, as we have opportunities for general green space to be added to our parks, are we serving the whole community, and that's athletic associations as well as the community, with the green spaces that allow us to do things for all of the athletic associations that could be able to use that green space. I worry when you look at Fred Richards And I don't know where we're at with that, so I apologize. But, my interpretation when I was sitting home watching the meeting was that we were going to have this large green space. And I would hate for us to have any of us drive by and see that green space has got like 3 or 4 people in it when we could have been taking rental fees from the associations to play soccer, lacrosse, football, flag football, all of those different things. So I'm not saying that athletics is what should drive all of our park decisions, but it's such a valuable resource in terms of revenue and usage of the facilities. And it's not just youth athletics. There's an adult soccer program now. There's adult flag football. There's ultimate frisbee. That's both youth and adult. So I don't know what the right mix is or the right proportion is, but is there a way that we can write a policy or a new policy or rejigger this now that we have some new fields that are going to be included in 2017 to kind of account for, we've got a growing population and we need some of this usage around some of these fields to both be used as general community spaces as well as athletic fields or activity fields, whatever that may be.
Okay. Brendan?
Unfortunately, I can't make it to the meeting this Thursday for school, but after reviewing the 2008 comprehensive plan, I had some, more specific ideas about different goals and policies. And so the chapter assessment tool, like that spreadsheet chart type thing, filled one of those out. And I guess, is that something I should send for, okay, great.
Yeah,
and
send
then
it to Janet.
Perfect, yeah, sounds good. And then another thing, I had a question if one of the specifics is that in the volunteers, there was kind of said one of the policies is going to be to recruit volunteers for different goals that the Parks and Recreation had. I was just wondering if some sort of partnering with schools. I know there's clubs in my school that are centered on. There's an Earth Club, and one of the things a couple weeks ago, one of the projects they had was removing buckthorn from parks. They do a bunch of different projects, and one of the biggest goals I think from the big ideas was sustainability. So I was just wondering if that was something that we could look towards because I know there's lots of teenagers, they like volunteer hours for resumes and for getting varsity letters and community service. Would that be something we could look for and try to work in there with youth, or is that something we try to kind of go away from? I was just wondering if that's something we could look to do.
No, I think that's a good idea, something to consider, right? So appreciate that. So when I was looking at it, I guess one of the concerns I have is, this is a 2018 10-year comprehensive plan. And so I'm a little bit concerned that we end up trying to dive too much into detail and we try to align things with what we want to have happen almost tactically over the next 6 or 12 months. And I'm not really sure that that's the intent of what we'd want in a comprehensive plan. But I just think that's something we're going to have to balance as we go through this to make sure it's specific enough and guiding enough that it not just helps us, but hopefully helps people over the next 5-10 years. Although I thought it was interesting in reading some of the feedback from the workshop that a lot of people said it didn't even know we had a comprehensive plan, and I've never seen it, and our commission's never used it. And so I think it becomes a challenge on, do we create a document that really someone's going to use? I did notice 2008 comp plan had 12 sections to it. And much like Brenda was saying, I think I would like us to think about starting with our 5 key areas of development from our 2016 strategy. And I've kind of done some work to see, do these even map? Does it make sense? Are we missing anything? But the 2008 plan had things like collaboration and partnership plan. And I kind of thought, is that really something that's in a comp plan, or is that methods that you use to accomplish something as you go forward? So I think there's some things that we can find that we can improve on as well. I also did get a little bit lost in our own, the 2008 one, and trying to figure out what exactly was a goal and what exactly was a policy, and when they had tactics showing up and things that were supposedly goals or policies. And so I think there's going to be some work that, I don't know if the consultant ends up doing that or if that burden is more on us, but I think we're going to need to be sharper on trying to figure some of those things out as well, and getting some consensus for those of us that are involved that we all kind of have the same idea on what's policy and what's a goal and why is it there. I did look at my section as well, which was community services and facilities. And maybe, Brenda, listening to what you were saying, I don't know if I did the same thing. I didn't look at critiquing their document as much as I was looking at what did they have in here that we should have or know about within our own comp plan. And frankly, there wasn't a lot, but there were a few things in here that, for example, they noted the fact that they were recommending that we apply for the governor's Fit City Award or something like that. Now, this was 10, 11 years ago, but never heard of that. So how well are the commissions kind of communicating their plans back and forth, which also came up in this workshop as well. That seemed to be a rather strong theme running through this, that the commissions aren't really connecting with each other. And so I don't know if anything is coming through staff around how that gets done, or if that's going to be up to us as a commission to say, do we want to have something that is abiding going forward where we're really connecting with people either during this process or after this process? Because I do get the sense that we probably all act in our own silos and got our heads down doing what we believe we have to do, but not enough horizontally. So those would be kind of some of my initial thoughts as I went through this. I'd like to see us get a lot more concise on what it is we're talking about. I don't think we're going to need to have 10 or 12 or 14 different sections, but I think if we really follow our strategic plan as an initial guide, then we're not wasting all that work that was done 2-3 years ago, and that becomes our framework that we can kind of roll into a framework for the comprehensive plan. Any other thoughts, questions? Otherwise, we'll have 4 of us, hopefully 4 of us, at least 3 of us, if it works for Corin's schedule, wading into the discussion Thursday morning, 7:30. That's in the community room, is that right? Yep. Community room, 7:30 Thursday morning.
Great, thanks,
Okay.
Greg.
Yep.
Okay, so next item is correspondence and petitions. So any comments on that section? Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, then we'll move on to comments. I don't have any additional comments, but are there any other member comments? Anything anyone would like to
I have
mention?
just one comment. I see the dome is up. Been in the dome. Looks really good. My only question would be, are they going to go in and vacuum, since it seemed like there was quite a few leaves and stuff? I think when they took the goals out and then brought them back in, the netting was full of leaves and stuff like that. So I don't know if they still do that kind of grooming thing that I see in the garage. I just wondered if that was potentially something that was going to be done. But otherwise, it was nice to see the facility back up and running and look good.
Okay, thank you. Anything else anyone would like to comment on?
The only other feedback I had, and we talked about it on Friday, was that I think we need to be careful when we have these different renderings that are out online. So I've heard several people have approached me about the lid and how, I feel like I've already talked about this, but the lid, how they're coming at, they're concerned that people were going to remove Devani's and Hilltop. And I'm like, that's not part of the plan. I'm like, we're so far behind knowing that. I said, well, look at the rendering. The rendering draws up very clearly that these things are being taken out. I was like, we're so not there yet. So I think we just need to be really careful that when we have renderings that have images of what it could look like or it does look like, that we're really careful, because I think people are jump to a rendering shows that we already know what's going to happen. And I think when they see that their buildings are gone, there's a lot of concern from it. So I just think that just some feedback that I've heard probably by 10 different people who approached me on it. So I just want to share that information out.
I think that's a good point, because I remember when we first saw the concept too, it was presented as ignore the white square buildings that are on top of the lid. You know, we have no idea what's going there yet, but you're right. People will see that picture and say, "Oh, look, decisions are being made already."
Well, especially because it looks like the funeral home is there, but behind it, nothing. It was like removed, and then they assume that we are for sure going to take out the ramp there, the exit ramp, and then where's all the construction or cars going to go? And I was like, we talked about this. We had the same concerns. I was like, it's not done, but it was the fact that the rendering's out there. I think that maybe we can write giraffe and like neon flashing letters, because lots of people are really concerned and don't agree that I'm telling them that it's just a rendering. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware.
Yep, good. Anything else?
I had one other thing, kind of going back to correspondence. I did see we did get the one correspondence about the interest in a skate park. And I don't know, Ann, to what degree, I mean, I know we can get flooded with correspondence and we can't respond to all of them. But in this particular case, when I kind of read this, I thought, well, how do you respond to someone like this, that if I think about what we've discussed, it might be fair to say we don't have any plans at present due to very limited demand for a skate park, but is there a way that we can give individuals feedback on, if you wanted to try to generate demand, this is how you go about it? So I didn't know how you respond to something like this when we get it.
I actually did respond to the gentleman, and he had some specific, like I think he mentioned Fred Richards, and I said, unfortunately, that project is done.
Yeah.
And I suggested that he reach out to the park board, and I think he also reached out to the city council just to express his interest. And, I said, as we're working on other master plans, it's good to bring these ideas forward so we can make sure to vet them out and, consider them for another park area that might be developed in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other comments before we turn it over to the staff comments? Okay, Ann?
Thank you very much. I just have a few this evening, as you've already heard from our enterprise facility managers this evening. In park maintenance, we're working on, obviously, change of seasons. We are doing a lot of leaf mulching projects in parks. We're winterizing our equipment, setting up tractors and trucks for our winter maintenance, repairing hockey rinks, doing aerating, top dressing, and dormant seating of our athletic fields and other park sites. We're doing building maintenance repairs. And then just general seasonal forestry work orders. Regarding ice maintenance, we're having a lot of questions as it's been a fairly cold December. The earliest we have ever started to build ice is the Monday after Thanksgiving. We'll continue to evaluate conditions. We need a good solid frost base in the soil in order for us to be able to start building ice, and we're not even close to that yet. But if everything continues to be as cold as it is, we'll get building ice just as soon as we can possibly do that. As mentioned, the Braemar Field Dome installation went very smoothly. The rentals started the weekend of November 4th, so it's always good to see that back up and operational. We've hired 53 seasonal staff for our warming houses. That's always a big project for our staff to recruit, interview everyone, and then onboard and then train. So that was a big project for Tiffany that she completed recently. And then just an update on the park signage project. We had hoped to have those signs installed. We actually ran into an issue. I can't remember if we've updated you on this, but we had an issue, our contractor had an issue of getting lumber. With the natural disasters between fire and hurricanes, getting lumber of that diameter was difficult. And so they weren't able to meet the original installation deadline that they had. Susan spent the day today, and we'll be spending the day tomorrow with the contractor identifying the exact locations and orientations of the signs, and we still hope to have the signs installed, the first set of signs installed before the end of the year. We'll then be working on the next phase of signs that we will be installing next year, and we'll be asking the Parks and Rec Commission for feedback on those signs. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Ann.
You're welcome.
I was going to mention too, Wooddale Park, the field there looks really great. I think there was irrigation put in, and the field is really beautiful now. So I just going to mention.
Thank you for mentioning that, and I should have mentioned that earlier. That was a project that was completely done by our park maintenance staff. That is a primary facility for lacrosse. It's a facility that has had horrible turf conditions for a long time. The soils were very compacted. It was very hard. There were a lot of weeds in that area, and so we decided to invest, and we went in, cleaned it out, aerated it, put in new soil, planted seed, and are irrigating that area. So it's going to be a much more higher quality facility and a safer facility for our athletes as well. So thank you for noticing.
Okay, so that takes us to the end of the meeting. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.